Why do I have to run to Bajira on my Warlock out of all the people? He even got his goon squad, the healers and the deeps. Oh, wow. Casters, man. While a ton of fun where you could just range people from afar. Once they get up in your face, I have no idea what to do. And honestly, I usually play a rogue. Out of all the casters, I guess the easiest one that I can technically play is the hunter. Because it's the only caster that cannot be kicked. Do you know how annoying it is? You get kicked in your powerful spells to be locked out of a whole tree. God damn it. It's difficult, but I also like a challenge. So here I am, making yet another video. Now you're probably thinking, Dalaran, stop complaining so early into the video. Chin up, pal, or whatever the fuck you normally say. I don't know. But today I am staying cheerful, as I want to give you guys some tips as somebody who is primarily a melee, and a good melee while at it, to try playing a caster. With 7.3 coming out, there's a lot of class changes, and some of you guys might even be dropping your main class onto another. Or maybe even thinking maybe play some alts because you might have some free time. With the way that 7.3 is going to deal in terms of getting your alts back up and running, it's going to be that much easier to gear. So if you're somebody who might want to try playing one of the powerful casters in PvP, well, here are a few advices that I would give you as somebody who primarily plays a rogue, one of the stronger melee in the game. Advice number 1, stop running into melee range. That is the hardest thing for me to do, even currently right now in the game. You would think, wow, Dal, it's just so easy, just stop running into melee range. To stay distance, it's so much easier to stay afar. But as a melee, you just have this natural flow of just want to press W long enough until you're right up in their face. As a caster, especially if you're one of the less mobile casters, which I would consider a Boomy to be somewhat pseudo-mobile, once in a blue moon mobility caster. A Warlock is literally never mobile caster, and even a Shadow Priest, which is one of the more less mobile, kind of stand your ground, plant your feet, and start casting spells of caster. Out of all those casters, really, just stop running into melee. That is the first thing you can do to help yourself, and the faster you train your brain to identify the fact that there's melee in range and really let it sink into your head, because naturally when I'm PvPing and I'm throwing out abilities, I don't think about my positioning. That is the last thing. I'm trying to think about the rotation. I'm trying to think about the enemy's position, their defenses, my defenses. There's already a lot of things that you're trying to learn. We are in Legion, so I won't say it's the most difficult expansion to learn how to play another class, but still it does take a little bit of time to get around to it. Out of all the casters that I have, the Warlock is the one that is the least mobile out of Boomy or Shadow Priest. I mean, Shadow Priest are not that much mobile, and Boomy do have Displacer Beast once every 20 to 40 seconds, somewhere in the ballpark of that. As a Warlock, you really do appreciate the fact that you get max range on enemy, between 30 to 40 yards, so you can get at least some abilities going and cracking before they get up close to you. And then from there, you really learn just the importance of your positioning, which strengthened my capability to play Shadow Priest even more than before, and especially that of a Boomkin. That is one of the most important things you can start doing to yourself. You just start keeping max range, thinking as far away as possible. Now, the second advice I would give on my list is learn how to play your class for PvP. As melee, you can go in a dungeon and a raid, and you have a fairly simple rotation, at least from the melee that I have been able to play and some of the melee that I've been able to see. Warriors, Assassination Rogues, Death Knights, Demon Hunters, most of them play the same way for PvE and PvP, bar a few talents and a few ability alterations when you use certain abilities and whatnot. In PvP, you also have the capability to use CC to really pressure other melee casters and healers alike. And for casters, it's a lot different. Casters, the way they play for PvP and PvE, in PvP they will even ignore certain mechanics because they're absolutely better for PvP or PvE. For example, take my Boomkin. My Boomkin's mastery is, every time I use Star Surge, I empower my Solar Wrath and Lunar Strike. So solar abilities and lunar abilities empower, and I have 3 charges that I can have on them at all times. In PvP, you basically ignore that mastery. For PvE in a raid, you never use any of the abilities unless you have that empowerment, and you should always have that empowerment for the extra damage. In PvP, you can't always afford to do that. Sometimes you'll have your full moons to slide through and get your Star Surge power as high as possible, but those are just a few cases where you will actually be able to do that. In most cases for PvP, you are there to get as much star power, get the dots up on the enemy, and then have as many abilities to burst in a single go. In some cases, you'll even try to get as many Star Surge procs back to back to back as instantly as possible, lined up together with a half moon or even better full moon and solar wraths. In most cases, even just spamming solar wraths is decent damage to put pressure on an enemy, and it builds up your solar power, which is something you can do in PvP. In PvP, you also almost never use your Lunar Strike, because the arcane damage is not that much different than that of a solar wrath, casts longer, and it does have cleave potential, but it's such minor cleave potential that it's even better to just put a Starfall above, over enemies and dot them all up. That deals more damage than casting the Lunar Strike ability, which blew my mind, because for the longest time as a Boomy player from even back in Cataclysm, I would use abilities where I would try to get as many of those solar or lunar strikes as possible. And back in Cataclysm, the lunar ability version of it was a lot stronger for PvP and a lot better, while the Wrath was a lot weaker. It had a faster cast, but it barely did any damage. Now for PvP, things have changed, and the way that the game is played for PvP and PvE is a lot different than, let's say, from Cataclysm, where in Cata, Boomy were more or less the PvE and PvP equivalent. Now second class. Demon Warlocks. As a Demon Warlock, you normally use the AoE ability where your demons pulsate with purple, unless you have 4+ targets, because then those AoEs have a higher chance to get your soul shards, which you use for Hand of Gold Dance to hit your enemies. In PvP, it's perfectly acceptable to use it on a single mob. Just get a few puppies in there, get your pet on the enemy and start AoEing, and buff all your abilities, buff all your pets in order to deal more damage. In PvP, you want to get as many pets in a single burst cluster and empower them once to save yourself on mana. For PvE in a raid, every time you send out a new pet, unless you can combo like 2 of them together, in most cases you send out a set of pets, you empower them. Send out a second set of pets, you empower them. Pets empower. Empower goes after almost every pet summon. In PvP, you're just trying to save up as many soul shards and then kind of bulk your pets together and empower them once so you don't waste too much mana trying to PvP in the game. So it's almost like the tables have been turned. For melee in past expansions, I've actually had to change my playstyles a little bit and my talents to fit for a more PvP playstyle. While as a caster, I could actually just go full PvE and deal good damage, but now it's like it's flipped. Now the melee are out there wreaking havoc and dealing damage, and for casters, it's a little bit more difficult. Definitely there are options in cases where casters can perform a lot in damage, but it's usually when they're comboed with a healer. And as somebody who was learning how to play casters as a melee, getting trucked by other melee all the time, you really do have to change your mindset. On one hand, in PvE, you use the soul shards at 4 or 5 for Hand of Gold Dance, while in PvP, 3 is perfectly acceptable. The difference you would think is minimal, but the absolute results of damage and the value of what you're getting out of your spells, those little semantics literally make you game in some cases. They actually change the way you play the game. So learning those things about your classes is extremely important when it comes to PvP. The last one on the list is learning how to juke or fake cast. Now this one is important, especially if you are somebody who wants to get better at Warlock or really any caster in general. Learning how to juke kicks is going to help you in being able to set up counter pressure, set up offensive damage, and overall help you kill the enemy without them killing you. One of the things that every melee has, and almost every other caster has as well, is an interrupt of sorts, a silence, a kick. Usually if you're casting a shadow spell or a nature spell, they'll kick that spell, and if that spell was nature, well then you're locked out of nature spells. Being able to kick enemies, like let's say a Frost Mage, locks them out of most of their offensive power abilities. And for Warlocks, most Warlocks having 2 schools of cast, in some cases it's not as detrimental, but if you're, let's say, you're a Demonology Warlock and get kicked on Shadow Bolt, now you can't cast a Fear at a melee who's literally just tearing right through you. Juking or fake casting is pretty much almost a WoW only term. I'm pretty sure that term juking is used in some of the other games, but juking a kick for a spell cast is basically almost like a WoW only term. It's basically a house term. The way you juke is you would want to wait and with your cast up until about 20% and then stop it by either moving, hitting escape, or hitting a keybind that stops your cast. And if that doesn't work, you want to start playing a mind game. Some people will kick you at about 20%. Some people will wait when the cast is about to 50% depending on the experience of a player. Some of the more experienced players will kick you at about 70 to 80. But some players might even be playing a mind game themselves. Some of them might never kick you ever and let you cast. But you're thinking that they're going to kick, so you're always stopping your cast. Juke casting is very tricky, because if you are always juking, that means you're never actually casting a spell. That means you're not actually getting the damage out. You're just trying to force an enemy's kick. And this really becomes the mind game, one of the nitty-gritty details that casters get to do. Something fun only for casters, be it healers and ranged DPS magic casters. Now this is difficult, and you will probably want some add-ons to show you what kicks are available. That we have Omnibar, which shows you all of the interrupts. So if you're somebody who is thinking of actually taking on the mantle of a caster and getting better at a caster on a regular basis, then you might want to get this add-on, because it'll show you all the different interrupts available in your area. I believe it's within like 40-yard range or so. So if you have a rogue sitting on you and you see in the Omnibar that there is a rogue kick available and they haven't used their kick, well, this is where you can kind of try to, if you can't get away from them or horror them away or stun them away or fear them away, you can try to see if you can juke their kicks. With rogues, it's a little bit tricky. If they're an outlaw rogue, they can gouge. If they're a rogue, they can, a subtlety or assassination, they can use stuns, they can vanish, they can cloak. So it doesn't completely stop you from being interrupted. It actually doesn't make you immune to interrupts at all, because there's a plethora of other things that can stop you. But if you're able to get their kicks out, that means you can at least have a chance of casting a spell right into their face. And that is satisfying as a caster, which I don't really get to experience that often because I just don't play my casters that often. But learning how to juke is going to improve you as a caster, and that's one thing I can tell you as a melee. The few times that I did score a juke, oh, that sweet fear when I fear a demon hunter who's just shredding through me away. Oh, it's that moment of breath of fresh air. Feels so goddamn good. But it is definitely difficult, so you will have to take the time to learn how to do it. Well, hopefully you guys enjoy my unique outlook at casters and this unique tips video. Now, you would probably think that a video by other casters who regularly play as casters, who maybe have a high rating as a caster, will probably be a lot more beneficial, and it could be. But I am trying to give my thoughts as somebody who normally doesn't play casters, just plays them casually, and was primarily a melee player. And those are just some of the things that I learned while playing as a caster myself. Thank you so much for watching. If you guys are casters yourself in the comments and you want to give a few helpful advices for specific classes or specs, for anybody thinking of playing anything, because 7.3 is coming up with a lot of cool new casting animations in particular, well, maybe you guys would enjoy them a ton yourselves. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next video.